Hey, this is Brandon, and thank you for joining us for our podcast, I Married a Narcissist. Thanks, Mom. Jennifer and I will share with you our amazing history and real-life experiences with a narcissistic parent and spouse, dysfunctional family members, and covert emotional abuse. We will discuss how it affected me and continues to affect us, and how I recovered from what felt like a desperate situation. We hope this podcast helps you and helps you realize you are not alone. All right, let's get uncomfortable. Cheers, love.
Cheers, love. Cheers to being grateful for knowing that we don't have all the answers, and healing comes with time, love, and support, and learning to relinquish, because that's when all the good stuff happens. So thank you for joining us for another episode of I Married a Narcissist. Thanks, Mom. In this episode, we're going to cover self-esteem, independence, inappropriate loyalties with your parent, struggles having a romantic relationship while you're still enmeshed with your mom, where's dad in all of this, and adjusting the levels of contact with your abuser through gray rock, low contact, and no contact, and what those mean.
Good topics. In love, as you know, I'm an avid reader, and I like to read about all sorts of subjects, not just narcissistic abuse and covert incest. There are other things out there. And I did come across a book by Robert Greene, and it's a book called Laws of Human Nature. But anyway, the book's fairly interesting. It's got a bunch of different topics in it, but there was a section titled Narcissism in it. And it did resonate with me as he discusses how important self-esteem, self-soothing, and is in transitioning independence with your parents. And he also talks about the inappropriate loyalties with your parent. But in this case, after reading it, I realized I was never allowed to transition into an independent or establish a sense of self. And I simply didn't exist except to make my mom feel good or be her buddy or make her proud. And if I didn't do that, look out. Therefore, I wasn't able to establish self-esteem, and now realize she didn't have one either. She required others to make her feel good constantly. And her self-esteem was dependent on how other people viewed her. She could not self-soothe or regulate, so she had to get her fill from us, my brother and I. She didn't have friends. She didn't have a career. She didn't have a good marriage, as she reminded us often. Mm-hmm. She was completely dependent on her sons for recognition, love, friendship. And she had a built-in constant audience to her stories about how great she was. And in turn, my own self-esteem was never developed at that crucial moment in my life. Mm. And I didn't get to establish normal boundaries and independence, and took on the role, as you say, a human pacifier for my mom. I like that term, though.
Well, I wanted to say whoopee because, everybody's got their little whoopee blanket or something. Right. And I was like, well, I don't know that's going to translate across our audience. So pacifier, everyone knows. A sucky.
And it's so fitting because they're kids.
Yes.
Exactly. So she needs to soothe herself. She can't do it. So, she
made her own pacifier.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
Yeah. It's a good way to describe it. Yeah, self-regulation, they're key emotional, probably pivotal points in your life when you're developing your independence and feeling independent, and self-esteem, which I like. Mm-hmm. Self-esteem broken down is esteem for oneself, mm-hmm. which is I love the way he broke that statement down.
Being able to soothe yourself.
Yeah, was that Kenneth Adams or?
No, this was the book. It was Robert. It was Robert Greene. It was just a short section, but he broke it down and how important self-esteem is, and that vital characteristic that you develop early on.
Right, and by saying the esteem for oneself, self-esteem, sometimes you don't think of it that way. Right, but it really made me pause and think about, when I met you, this is why this was so hard to watch from the outside in. I saw you as and still see you, and my view hasn't changed, but such a strong, confident, smart, self-assured man. I mean, I literally remember telling my mom the story of when we had gone on a little day date, and I was in a lot of traffic and I couldn't back out because people weren't letting me in. And you just walked out into the street and stopped the cars and let me back out. And I was like, my mom needs to know about this. And it's so funny because I have a good relationship. So I got to brag a little bit about you to my mom, which was fun. But then I would see this juxtaposition when your mom would come around and you would literally stiffen, get uncomfortable, get quiet, clam up. And then as I would start to see texts and emails come through, and this was before I ever knew what the content of those texts or emails were, it was hard to watch because I didn't know what was happening, but I just knew it changed your literal being in the moment. And she would make sure, as I learned in those text messages, one, keep you distracted so you fully weren't present to develop a healthy relationship with me.
Right.
And it was starting to work. It was starting to, tear at us a bit. And then she was also making sure she was dropping a few well-placed doubt topics about me.
Right.
She liked me, but then she wasn't so sure, or, she was very powerful. And so I started to realize the reason you stiffened and would become uncomfortable is because you never knew what she was going to say, because she would just sometimes throw literal tantrums, and then her text messages would be constant, and you would sometimes just respond to her just to get through the next exchange and get her to stop. And so you realize that if I just get back to her, it'll calm down for a bit, because they're always right. Their needs are always first. And if you could just simply get a response in there, it would probably go away for a bit.
Yeah. And she just had this uncanny way. I mean, she's always had a way of being always right, and it was useless to try to defend my decision with her, because she is truly a master manipulator and a gaslighter. And she would take things back even like a year back, where that one time I said I was sorry, or that one time she'll serve things back, years later. Or I said thank you for something, right? And she'd be like, see, I am a good mom. You sent this thing back, and
because you were grateful.
I was, and then I'd get so confused, and and so I wouldn't even be able to remember what boundary, she would gaslight me. So I wouldn't even be able to remember what boundary I just erected or what I didn't want to do for her. And it was constant chaos. And they win by, as you say, lighting a bomb and walking away. And that's how it feels. And it just leaves you in such despair, sadness, and confusion. And that's the intent. And not wanting to disappoint them, but also trying not to be selfish and think of only me, right? And it's a good quality, which is what they exploit. But
you were doing it to the detriment of self.
Yes, no doubt. And if we didn't do what she wanted, as I've told the audience before, she would remind us how lucky we were and how grateful we should be. And when you're raised with so much guilt and shame, those feelings are very easily activated by your mom in particular. So she would see me spending time with you, and that would, and she would try to stir up a little guilt or just drama, right? To distract or derail.
Right. And you'd be aware of what was happening when I wasn't.
Exactly. And if I wasn't in such a healthy place and in therapy, it probably would have worked, because she's formidable. The ties are deep. They run deep. The trauma runs deep. And without a sense of self, so much is hindered. And I know, love, I don't have to remind you, but we would be on dates and my mom would be constantly texting. And I would say, I'll just get back to her, but it was really never that simple.
No. I do remember. I remember it's a tough situation for someone getting to know you to be in, but there would just be one after another, after another, after another. And it became obvious that she needed your constant attention. And if you tried to stop, she would flip things around and then blame it on you, which I thought was like wow, how did she just make you feel bad for making?
It's guilt judo.
it's ninja-like. It's confusing to watch. And so I realized that, yes, gaslighting, they literally distort reality in such a way that it leaves you going, well, did I communicate inappropriately? Was I unkind? If I could have just done one more thing, would have that been better? And so the self-doubt that she raised you with was so effective because all she had to do was say something like, woo, what's going on in your head? What's wrong with you?
Right.
And you would literally go, what is wrong with me?
Right.
And so it reminds me of the narcissist prayer, because it just is so well said. It's, that didn't happen. And if it did, it wasn't that bad. And if it was, that's not a big deal. And if it is, that's not my fault. And if it was, I didn't mean it. And if I did, you deserved it.
That is perfect. And that pretty much sums up every text and email I get dealing with a narcissist, in both in my mom's case and my ex-wife. So
you just give in.
You do. It's just too much, and that pretty much sums up my entire childhood, right? And it's such a complex topic, and I want to reference Silently Seduced by Kenneth Adams. I know we mentioned that in the previous episode, and it touches on what we've already talked about, and certainly in the covert incest. And in chapter 2, Kenneth Adams, he calls the covert dysfunction that I had with my mom as psychological marriage.
Wow.
Right, and that's a great term, and I'm paraphrasing here because he's got so much good stuff in this book. And in the psychological marriage, I was a surrogate partner emotionally. And in this parent-child relationship, it is the role of the child to meet the parent's needs. And in this scenario, the child ends up feeling ashamed of getting their legitimate needs met and fears displeasing the parent. And the child feels that expressing his own needs or her own needs will make the child feel even more abandoned from the parent. And then that entrapment just continues. It's a cycle.
It's so complicated. So you're getting your needs met while meeting their needs. So it becomes this self-fulfilling psychological, how do they call it, marriage, because you're also getting something out of it too, and you're feeling
that's been taught
that
that's what my role is, right? Is to I've been taught that is my role, to supply her with her needs
instead of them to support your emotional needs.
Right, and so, but then if I feel like I'm not doing that, then I feel like I'm going to be abandoned because I'm the kid.
Right. Okay, I get it.
And then he goes on in chapter 6, that because of the unhealthy psychological marriage that was established, the abused child, me in this case, usually is afraid to commit and ends up in ambivalent marriage relationships. He said there are a couple of reasons for that, for the ambivalence. But one that applies to this episode, in my case, is that since the parent always demanded loyalty and devotion throughout the childhood, the primary loyalty defaults to the parent. So, in turn, in our case, you, the spouse, only gets a portion of your needs met because I'm balancing loyalties, which refers to inappropriate loyalties to your mom, parent.
And she's the primary, but you're trying to make me the primary too.
Right. And so, and this has been ingrained in me, right? So it leaves me feeling stretched, guilty. I'm disappointing two people now. I don't want to lose you, but I'm afraid of being abandoned by my mom.
Right.
And so in our dysfunctional family, she just took first place. And that's how we were raised.
Yeah, I'm glad you read that because it does help me understand a little bit more too. So I'm always learning. And you were literally parentified by her, and there taking on her role as surrogate husband, you had to put her first because you guys were the primary relationship.
Right.
And then you would try to put me first, and of course that would never work. We both can't be first. And it's much like that analogy we always make fun of. Just give it 110%.
Right.
Well, that's mathematically impossible.
Right.
There is no such thing.
Right.
And that's what you were literally trying to achieve, 110%.
Right.
It makes me laugh a bit. It's not funny. And the last thing a healthy partner wants, me, the healthy partner, is I didn't want to ever interfere with your relationship with your mom.
Right.
And I didn't even begin to think that I was smart enough to understand what the relationship really fully looked like.
Mm-hmm.
So I did try to sit back and, just make my time and fill my space and be where I was welcome and stay out of the way. And then when I realized that the behavior wasn't just eccentric, that it was abusive, that's when I started questioning things a little bit more. And when you would say, oh, I got another text or I got an email, I started to ask to see these things a bit, because it's the only way I can really understand what is happening and the responses and the abuse that you were constantly being put through under the guise of, but I love you. So thank goodness, as you see, because this is such a complex topic, that you sought therapy. And we were able to build this loving relationship, and I have to do a shout out to Zach, because you had to dive in pretty deep with some pretty uncomfortable topics to try to, and you're still learning about this topic and how it impacted you in ways that you don't even realize until sometimes after the fact.
Yeah. And thanks, love. I don't know where I would be without you. That's for sure. You are my soulmate and God sent, as they say. And thank you for going through this with me, and I want to say thank you for doing all the research on your own on this topic, because I know you were doing that in your spare time, if you had any, to try to better understand what's going on so you could support me and love me better. And so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Because we're I was starting to learn how abusive it was while you were learning how abusive it was. This is just how it was.
Yeah, we kind of did it together.
Right, I'm like, you're right. This is abusive.
Right.
Well,
and it gave you the bravery to share some things, the text messages with Zach, I think, which was really helpful for him. And I realized, which is why I'm able not to be ambivalent, because I realized you weren't going any. I mean, you love me for me, not how dysfunctional my family was. It didn't matter. You loved me for me. Right. And so I was able to put myself out there emotionally, so be safe.
Yes, you're a safe spot. And, but in addition to having a healthy partner in therapy, I was really able to examine the genesis of my situation and how I ended up where I am. And I started, I began to put all the pieces together, and all the times my mom was always with me growing up. And, we asked, where's Dad? He was working out of town for about 7 years that I remember. And we moved a lot. And my dad was working out of state. He was gone during the week and he was home on the weekends. He was several states away is his company. And he showed up when he could. I remember making the games. I remember, he had to have surgery for broken a bone. He showed up. He flew back. I remember him being there. He made great efforts to do that.
She was your Monday through Friday.
She was. Yeah. She was the one that all summer taking me to tournaments and driving me around school and all that. I just, so my dad did the best he could. And he was building an incredible business, but he needed to get away, and he left my mom to doing the quote unquote so-called parenting, right? Mm-hmm. And I do know his job required him to be out of state, but knowing my mom now, in hindsight, I think he probably took every chance he could to be away, and that makes sense. An audience, if you're experiencing this or have experienced this, sometimes you just need to get away for your sanity, or, maybe you'll distract yourself and just bury yourself in work. Right. I think that's fairly common. But I've done a lot of self-care and research, and certainly more than my dad did. He's from that generation where nothing's wrong, just work it out. But I wish in hindsight, my mom and dad had been divorced earlier. And this is just, again, I'm not a therapist. This is just from my specific experience. But I wish they had been divorced earlier, instead of my brother and I learning over time that this type of relationship is normal. Right. And I don't blame him, because this is all he knew. Mm-hmm. And this is probably what his parents taught him. Mm-hmm. But this is also the same reason stuck in my dysfunctional marriage for 16 years.
Right.
And
we thought love hurt.
Yeah,
the song was right.
Yeah, and it did.
It did. It was painful.
Exactly.
Just like growing up with her.
Yeah. As they say, I was just looking for a wife, not a degree in therapy.
Well, now, you got both. An ex-wife and a degree in therapy.
Right. So I just want to, but anyway, I just want to give my perspective as being a son and a father, that, if the relationship is unsalvageable because of a narcissist or toxic person, then in my feeling, it's just better to rip off the Band-Aid, right? So that everybody involved, and I know you agree with me on that one, that those that will be involved in the future, kids and their kids and their kids, that, everybody's got the best chance of having a healthy
image of love.
Yes.
Yeah. And
stopping the cycle, which I know we've already talked about. But, we've only got so much time on this planet. So if you're involved with a toxic, clinical, pathological, narcissist, or whatever, rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah.
That's my feeling, because you got to take care of yourself too, so.
Yeah. And narcissists, probably are very, very rarely ever diagnosed.
Right.
So don't wait for a diagnosis, because it's probably never going to come. So it is very easy to look back now, Love, though, and see that I know your dad thought he was doing his best. And I think sometimes people think they are saving the kids if they stay in, but all they're really doing is delaying the inevitable and showing your poor littles a very dysfunctional view of love and marriage. There's usually disrespect that goes on between the two. There's usually a parent backstabbing and back-talking one of the parents when the other one's not there, which in your case, your mom would do when your dad was out of town. And that's so confusing. And it doesn't save or help your children. It just keeps their development at bay. And the ideas of what they should properly mirror are so wrong.
Right.
So I think he hid like you did in work. I mean, you built an incredible career, and I think part of it was in self-defense of not wanting to be home with the ex.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so much easier than being psychologically abused at home.
Yes.
You were psychologically abused by clients.
Right. And I was good at what I did, and I was able to build
solid.
A business, and I think that felt good.
No, it was logical. You could feel accomplished, and nobody was gaslighting you, lying, sneaking, manipulating, guilting, and shaming you at work.
Right.
You literally had problems in front of you, solved them, and you succeeded. So it's tough, and I know it's not easy when the kids are little to get out. There's never a right time, and you sometimes kick the ball down and go, "Oh, I'll do it next year. I'll do it next year. We'll just stay through Christmas." And either way, you break up the notion of family. But the thing I challenge people is, did it really ever exist?
Right. And
family.
True. And hopefully people don't have to get to the point of despair. That's usually where it ends up, for people to want to get out. And that's unfortunate, but that is one of the first stages of healing, is to recognize you're in despair. And I certainly was.
Right.
And that was well said, Love. And I think that's, why we're so grateful for all the professionals out there, authors, who have allowed us to identify and find a way out of this, and all these healing methods. And I'll just briefly go into a few of those. There's, I'm simplifying this, but there's gray rock, there's low contact, and last but not least, there's no contact when you're dealing with this, toxic or narcissist. And the one that no one wants but sometimes is the only choice, is the no contact. But we'll start with gray rock, and it's kind of, said to be when you're just acting like a boring rock, right?
Right.
Because they get their feed from us. So we're emotionally non-responsive. Don't allow them to have that feed. We don't allow them to lure details out of us so they can create more drama by twisting it around and turning it back on them.
Right.
And so the idea is, usually they grow bored and move on. Of course, in my mom, who's a grandiose narcissist, and it's just another challenge for her.
Right.
Right. And as you mentioned, they hear the word no, or I'm not getting what I'm going to get. They turn it up. So this is an exchange, because we always like to put real life exchanges, emails, texts in our podcast. So just a little context. We let my mom take the kids for the weekend away. We just needed a little time alone, much needed.
Yeah, and she volunteered.
She did. And, we're trying to raise 3 kids amongst a custody and divorce battle. Right. But you will see she cannot leave me or us alone. Right. It's a constant timeline of fun, and she just keeps texting us. And then there's a little scuttle with her and Dominic, our son, and you'll see she can't self-regulate, which is what we started the podcast with, this episode with.
Right.
And then she serves up guilt. So we're going to do a little...
Yeah, and I will say, start a little bit, is that we didn't print all the stuff that was prior, but the whole time they were gone, she was texting you multiple times a day. Here's the kids in bed in robes. Right. Here's the kids on a rock. Here's and we were like, we're trying to have a weekend away, but she just had to constantly engage.
Exactly.
So you would kind of placate her later in the day, but this is when it kind of got... Am I playing?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, you nail it.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. I am playing Crazy Nana. Okay. Dominic was great the whole trip. And this is actually interesting because I feel like she's trying to allude that there's something going on at home. Right. Dominic was great the whole trip, but when we got back, he seemed to come unglued. Probably just overtired. He wants to walk home. You there?
Okay. Thanks. We are home.
He was really great the whole trip, especially with Estelle. He just started yelling at me and arguing back. I did say he was being a smartass. I don't do well with kids yelling at me.
No worries. Our walk will be good for him. Has he left yet?
Yes, he's on his way.
Thank you.
Sure. The kids were really great the whole time. Very cooperative with me and each other. Absolutely no arguments.
That is great. Glad it went well. Thank you for the mini vacation.
We really had a great vacation. Would do it again. Our room was perfect. Photos, videos, photos, videos.
Right. Thank you. Can you send the other 2 back in about 15 minutes? We're going to eat around 5:30.
More photos. They really didn't have much sugar. Hot chocolate the first night for dessert. Didn't do that again. A scoop of ice cream last night for dessert. And I gave them half a Coke at noon because Dee and Lars had headaches. That's not much, is it?
Not at all. They get sugar when they're with Nana.
I might have to get Lars help with the TV. No signal on any. I'm talking to Comcast now. She came over to the house.
Exactly. Then I text her back after she leaves. I said, okay, let me know.
And then she said, I think Maricela pulled the cable cord out of the box when she was here. Lars will have to check everything in their room the next time he comes. You might want to check your Uber account. I just sent 2 emails. Last year, my account was hacked. And I had to get a credit card. Looks like they're trying again. Uber's working now. I'm on a roll. And those are all separate text, audience. Right. He's ignoring.
I'm gray rocking the best I can.
Yes. Well, gray rocking was all you were being boring as a rock. Totally. Thank you. Are they coming home?
Right.
And then the next day, because you didn't respond to all that stuff, I don't know what your schedule's like this afternoon. I'm hoping there's a time I can come over to spend just a few minutes with Dominic. The whole time we're in the B&B was so magical. Dee was so great, and he and I got along so well. I just hate it that their trip ended that way. Would just like to give him a hug.
I said, thank you, but that is not necessary. Dominic totally recovered yesterday. It happens when kids get tired and important for them to self-regulate. We're all good.
Okay, I needed it for myself. Next text. But I guess I don't count. Next text. I took the kids for 3 days. I thought it might have bought me 5 minutes. Next day. Regardless of how it ended, I had an absolutely fantastic time with the kids. As I said, they all got along beautifully, and Dominic and I were the closest that we've ever been.
Change reality, change history.
I know. And that she finally says, I don't care if Dominic can self-regulate. I can't.
Right.
Get him back in line. I need to come over. And I need to have this for me because I need him to tell me how great the weekend was for him.
Right, which is why if Dominic wasn't with healthy parents like us, that, he would never have this moment to self-regulate.
And when he walked home in the door, he was so happy to see us.
Yeah.
He wasn't even upset at all.
No, he did a good job, and that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
You let them get over it on their own.
Yep.
They build self-esteem.
But you were so gray rocking this. If you go back, you were boring like a rock.
I was trying.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Send them home. Glad they had a great time.
Mm-hmm.
And she just kept engaging. And then you kept it so short and unemotional. And then I realized that it doesn't sit well with her. She just keeps turning it up and moving topics. And this is day after day,
Mm-hmm.
where the engagement is so needed on the other end while we're just, again, raising kids, working, scheduling, dealing with court or whatever's in front of us at that time with the kid's mom. And there's your mom texting several times a day, every day until you respond. Right. So even through gray rocking, which did not work, it actually kind of turned up the text messages. Right. I could see how it's beneficial if you have to deal with a toxic person, like maybe a boss, or you're co-parenting with a toxic person, or you have a parent in another state. But gray rocking in our case didn't work. Right.
Or maybe let's say you've got a toxic family member and you see him once a year.
Yeah.
And then maybe, there's other people there, you got a gray rock or whatever. But, and obviously, I was trying to do everything I could, and then back to just to reference the text exchange. I was also trying to create a little bit of space in between answering texts. And during this whole time period, I'm trying to do that. I mean, texts will go days and days and I won't respond. And I was trying to encourage her to reach out to someone else, Mm-hmm. And of course that didn't work. And as you just mentioned, she just turns up more guilt and shame in the text exchanges because she wasn't getting her needs met when she wanted them met. So low contact wasn't very effective,
That's what you did next after gray rocking.
Yeah, so I try the gray rocking. Then the low contact is, I'm just, not texting her, not responding, just letting her, her text dangle in the ether, her emails not reading.
Mm-hmm. But still letting her have time with the kids.
Yeah, mm-hmm. And so...
You're just not participating in her time with the kids.
Exactly. But then she turns it up a notch, as they say, to 11. And that's when she started leaving hurtful packages at our house, vindictive and backhanded letters in the cards to the kids. Right? She sent a creepy photo with just her, the kids, and my brother, referring to them as the family.
Yeah, because you were no longer part of the family. Oh, yeah.
And then the most glaring package was the brown paper bag with hurtful messages written on it in black Sharpie. And it was left on the front seat of my car.
That's stuff you see on like 2020.
Yeah. I mean, this is like I was taking the kids to school. I remember it was a rainy day. It was left on the front seat of my car in a brown bag with Sharpie written all over it. And I mean, it was like the adult version of leaving a bag of what on the front door.
Right, and just to get your attention.
Yeah, and I felt, I'm in my 40s, I felt like I just got toilet papered.
Yeah, you did.
But the retaliation is painful. Because then written in Sharpie are more, themes of guilt and shame.
Right. And questioning our relationship. Remember, she wrote, think when all this started.
Yeah, it started when Jennifer came in your life.
It's like, Brenda, that's not nice.
Right. So... But that is after 1.5 years of focus and thoughtful boundary setting, I finally had to go. And I want to emphasize 1.5 years of focused and thoughtful boundary setting.
Very kind,
yes, I mean, I really tried to do what I could to salvage anything there might have been. And, but anyway, I finally had to go no contact. And I will tell you, the audience, if you haven't done it yet, and it's very, very hard. But, if you have done it, I commend you. But it does go against every cell in your body and how I was raised, that this, blood is thicker than water rubbish. Because I know that was always imprinted in me, that family at all cost.
Right.
And so if you have that, that is... It's really, really hard to go no contact with family because you share the same blood. But it does take some bravery. But it does give you time to heal and time for them to get better if there is any modicum of chance for that they can change.
Right.
I mean, you and I know after all the research that narcissists can't.
We know now.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're reading. That's what we believe in.
Right.
And but deep down, when you're going through this, you still hope they can.
Of course.
Right. I mean, with any healthy, somebody with enough self-reflection that, you know, people can heal themselves. And I'm not a therapist, so maybe somebody who is not clinically a narcissist or just toxic, maybe they have the ability to change. I don't know. I only have experience with the 2 relentless narcissists in our life.
Yay!
Yay! And I do know that I did hold hope out that she could change.
Of course.
You know, but until you cut off contact, in my specific case, I was never allowed to exist. Where I could healthily see that the narcissist couldn't change, right? So by pulling myself out and getting, you know, self-care and reflection and just time to think, the longer I was away, the more I realized, like, this person's never going to change. They would have done it by now.
And when you go back and read the text exchanges now, your response and reaction to them is completely different than I remember sitting next to you 2-3 years ago, when you would get them. You now are angered by her talking to you that way and you allowing it. Right.
So the no contact is, I think, crucial in any stage. At least it was for me. And I mean, I got to have some clarity, and it became, like you said, it was so glaring once I was able to separate myself from that cyclone of gaslighting and guilt.
Right.
You know, and I was able to finally get into a triage, you know, in a safe place where I could recover and start to heal. But, you know, cutting off contact was the hardest thing I had to do. My family, for sure. But I believe it saved us and me. Certainly me, and in turn us. Right.
And the kids.
And the kids. And I think it's really the only solution when you're dealing with a narcissist or pathological toxic person. There's no way they're ever going to get help. They won't go to a therapist. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not our job to fix them. And it's just, they're incapable of healing and getting better. So unfortunately, there's this process that we have to go through with low contact and gray rocking and all that stuff and giving the benefit of the doubt. But in the end, they do not change.
No. And the hard also part was with the kids, we had to realize, what are we doing allowing her to participate in the children's life, but you're protecting yourself from a psychological abuser.
Right.
So you're in turn saying it's okay for the kids to be abused, but not me.
Right.
So that was really difficult to decide. The kids can't be around her because she is awful.
Right.
When no one's looking, no one's around, she is saying things that can't be unsaid, unheard, unspoken, unfelt.
Yeah.
And so we did realize it had to extend to the children because we can't throw them to the wolves of something that took you 40-something years to unravel.
True.
She's still...
And it was the same for my past marriage, right?
Exactly.
It's just like, no, this is...
And we still continue to defend that one in family court services all the time. Luckily, they're always on your side because she's crazy, but it's helpful.
Yeah, and, you know, in this day and age, I mean, fortunately, you know, you can cut off phone and email. The unfortunate thing is that, you know, you know, my mom, she could still hover, right? Mm-hmm. She still mailed those cards. She would, you know, stop, you know, walk by the house. But the cards were, and the audience, listen, it always is around holidays. It's birthdays. It's, you know, that's where we feel the most guilt, right? Yeah. It's holidays, birthdays, that sort of thing. But, you know, so we were able to go no contact with my mom and my brother, who's a flying monkey. That was required too, but we would still get these letters in the mail, and we didn't know how to stop that. We'd do return to sender, and she'd send another one, return to sender. So
and they always had these cryptic, hurtful messages in there.
And you know, she just started doing postcards because she knew we wouldn't open them,
and she thought the kids would see it.
Right, and so that's the subject line version of mail.
It is.
Right?
The postcard terrorist.
Yeah. So anyway, the audience, so what we ended up having to do, we had to mail a cease and desist letter from our attorneys to my mom.
Right.
And I know that's
extreme.
It's extreme. This is, I mean, that to get to this point, we've tried everything. But it also shows you the relentlessness of a narcissist and toxic person, which is why you got to go no contact, and certainly in our case, right?
She felt entitled to abuse you, and you had to take it. Yeah.
But I will say the cease and desist letter from an attorney, right. It worked, and it worked twofold. It did get her to stop, with the exception of one time. Mm-hmm. It did get her to stop, so we weren't completely terrorized every time we opened the mailbox, because that does keep, the intent is to keep you on edge and to hoover, right, and to make you like, I'm still out here. But, which was so glad you were brave. I remember talking to you about this on the way back from my therapist, and you're like, I'm freaking tired of this.
I was mad.
You're mad. You're like, this is beep, beep, beep. Yeah. I'm like, and I agree.
Did I curse?
I don't. Yeah, maybe.
That's awesome.
I think you're pretty mad.
Good. Okay,
yeah, I know it's rare, but I think you were pissed, and rightfully so.
Yeah, I'm tired of being terrorized and not feeling like I have any control over my own home.
Right. And you're like, I'm tired of it. Let's just call it what it is. And so we called the attorneys and sent a cease and desist letter. And so I said all that to bring to the second thing, which was we were able to pull her out of the shadows. Like, we listed everything she's doing, and we're going, this is abuse, and we're going to identify the things that you're doing. We're not going to protect you and pretend it's not happening, because we're no longer ashamed of your shameful behavior.
Exactly.
Right? So we put it in writing, came from an attorney, and
they detailed all of her behaviors, from the stalking of the children, stalking of me, endless mail letters, 10 emails a day in the middle of the night, reporting the car stolen to the sheriff. Like, they detailed it out in the cease and desist, I remember.
Yeah. And I know it's scary because you just don't want to do that. You don't want to start that type of thing with your family, but then...
Right. But you were trying to end it. You weren't trying to start it.
No, I don't. You don't want to start another fight.
Right.
Yeah.
You were trying to end it.
Oh, I know, of course. Yeah. But, then you worry about all the flying monkeys coming back and getting it. Yeah, retaliation. I guess that's what it is. But anyway, so we were able to get our power back and called it what it was, and that's abuse. And I just want to tell the audience, it was so liberating, as daunting as that thing is to mail a cease and desist letter to your family member. It was so liberating. So
it really was. And we aren't suggesting no contact and cease and desist is right for everyone. I think we do have a very rare extreme case of two women that are malignant narcissists in their own right, or definitely personality disordered. But if you end up getting to no contact, it does free you. If you do it in a compassionate, slow way, you did try to save the relationship, but you just realize that you can't have a relationship with someone when you don't exist. That isn't a relationship. So I remember I often would say to you, when you say something about, I want to have a relationship with my mom, I would say, what is the definition of relationship for you? Right. Because in my family, it means where both of you respect, love, and speak to each other with kindness. And you guys would be so brutal to each other when I mean you guys, Rob and your mom, to you. You were always the kind one. Right. And I always thought, I don't think that's a relationship, my love. Yeah. So I think we need to define that word a little bit more. But you realize you just couldn't, and boundaries wouldn't be tolerated, and you can't negotiate independence. That's just a basic human right. And so I'm so proud of you on the work you did.
Thanks, Lenny.
And I wanted to end, because I know we've gotten a little heavy, on a happy note, because we just revisited a text message from your dad earlier when your mom was still calling out all her powerful flying monkeys. Right. And in your family, your dad is definitely the powerful one that everyone respects. Yes. Rob uses them. Your mom uses them. So your mom tried to use him because you wouldn't call her back or email her back, right? Because she was turning up the guilt and shame. Right. And I just think this is wonderfully supportive. Okay,
well, why don't you play my dad?
Oh.
Because he's...
I'm going to play your dad?
Yeah.
I don't think I have a deep enough voice. I'm going to try.
Okay.
Your mother keeps... Oh, that's a total fail. Huh?
No, it's good. It's good.
Your mother keeps calling me about her situation with you. I love how he says her situation with you, not your situation.
Right.
That's actually brilliant. I won't call her until you tell me what to say. Let me know if I can help.
And then I respond to my dad. I said, thank you for the support. So nice to have that. And I'm sorry she is bothering you. The kids, Jennifer and I, haven't been better, and she can't stand that she isn't at the center of it. She's a sick twist. No need to call her back, but seriously, she is terrorizing Jennifer, the kids, and me, and she needs to find something in her life besides Rob and me. Life is hard enough, and I need her to let us live our life and to be adults. That sums it up. I love you, and thank you for the text and thinking about what is best for me. I can always count on you for that.
Okay, let me get my... Sorry. No, I'm emotional. Okay. So, Dad, I'm not going to do my deep voice. Thank you for your love. I get the situation. I agree with your assessment. That's it.
That's it. So
simple.
That's what, even though he had unintended, he's a flying monkey, he doesn't know what he's being a flying monkey. Yeah. He received me well, and he says, I love you, and I'm going to support you.
And he has fleas, so he didn't intend to be a monkey.
Right.
He just was accidentally used as one because he was raised the same way.
So we wanted to end on that. That's a good text. That was a feel-good text. I believe it made me cry when I got it from him.
I think so,
yeah. So, well, love, this bottle is empty.
That's right.
And audience, thank you so much for joining us and spending your time with us. And we do want to hear from you. So feel free, please check out our Instagram. It's the Narc Mom Help on Instagram.
Right.
Is that right, love?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And then on Facebook, it's I Married a Narcissist. Thanks, Mom. Or you can just go directly to our site, which is thanks-mom.com. And you can follow us from our own website and our episodes there, and send us an email, tell us what you think, comments. We want to hear from you. Thank you for your time.
And a little shout out to all the listeners. We've got over 160 podcast downloads. So we're super excited about that and can't wait to hear any questions or comments.
All right, guys, thanks for your time.
All right, cheers.
Bye. Thank you for listening to I Married a Narcissist. Thanks, Mom. We would love to hear from you, so please find us on Instagram. Our handle is NarcMomHelp. That's NarcMomHelp. Or find us on Facebook, I Married a Narcissist. Thanks, Mom. Or go directly to our website, which is thanksmom.com. That's THX-mom.com. Thank you.